Hi there, welcome to the new lecture on designing Azure files. The files that we are talking about, the shared files, or it could be your company data, or any kind of files or folders and the network shared folders, how we are going to design in a cloud-based of Azure files. So it requires a lot of analysis, and the option that you have with a lot of implementation options also you have it. So I think this lecture is really covers a lot of in-depth knowledge for you in terms of the designing Azure files. So this is an important decision you're going to make it post to this lecture. You could easily take out what are the key considerations that needs to be taken. For example, how you're going to access it and what is the update files and what is the performance. All of that stuff you're going to learn within this lecture. So that being said, you could actually choose to replace your existing SMB file shares with relevant what Microsoft Azure can offer you in with the help of Azure files. It could be a direct SMB or whatever the network share folder you call it by using SMB or CIFS protocol for maybe a Linux or maybe a Mac OS can access directly that shared folder, or you have your local file sync service that can sync your entire files from your on-premises and how you're going to use it. So we are going to cover that in the next slide, my friends, but let's try to understand Azure files can be used very similar, like you could use as a SMB, like shared folders, as well as the locally also it can offer from an on-premises also can be configured as a sync options are available. So now let's try to understand what other things it can offer. So it can actually if let's say if there is some developers, they can store their applications and configuration files directly from a file share folder, or they can connect their configuration of the application directly to the Azure file share, so that they're going to replace the requirement of having a new virtual machine. So in other way, Azure files also a serverless technology, right? So you don't need to have a server for this. So this action definitely reduces the time to get a new virtual machines in the production. The second most useful case would be with the help of this Azure files or file shares directly from Azure Cloud. A company does not need to buy and deploy expensive redundant hardware because in other way this entire Azure file shares will follow your resilience. At the same time, it's completely hardware redundant, and also you no need to worry about the software updates. Entire things will be taken care by Microsoft Azure Cloud. So these shares also will work across the different platforms. Let's say it can work from Windows or Linux or Mac OS, as we talked about it. So that's a great opportunity for us. Even though you have the option for resilience of Azure platform, which inherits your file share, which makes files globally redundant, at the same time, on top of it, you could actually configure your configuration for backup, automated backup, or maybe a snapshot based on the a service called Azure Site Recovery Vault, or recovery service vaults can be configured to take automated backup, and by default the data is encrypted in transit by using with HTTPS protocol, and whatever it is stored also encrypted when at a rest site. So these are the couple of features that we can talk about on immediate basis on a designing for Azure files. So these things you need to consider, and now it's a time for us to choose the data access methods. When I say data access methods, that will help you to look at your Azure files types. If you remember in the storage account, when we designed, we have chosen the types and the performance and the cost and the pricing. Similar things is going to apply here also. So those parameters we have to validate. That's what this designing Azure file system. So first let's understand what Azure files can offer for us. So it can offer an option one, like you could directly mount the Azure file share. So whatever the share you're going to create, that can be enabled to mount on your Windows machines or Mac OS or Linux, because it uses the serverless technology in the backend for Azure file shares, and you could deploy in a production on immediate basis, and it doesn't require any kind of a managing file shares or NAS device. All of that stuff is really, it doesn't require, and you could directly mount. That means you don't have to apply any software updates or patching or any kind of things. It's just the fully redundant and resilience in terms of access. So it's directly available for us. So coming back to the second solution, the first solution we talked about mapping as a network drive. That's the first option, right? That's nothing but a direct mount. Now the second option, what we have to design is Azure File Sync. So you need to know what exactly is your file sync. So let's say you have an on-premises and you want to configure this on-premises file servers with some kind of option for a cache. So you need to cache some of the Azure files for your on-premises with Azure File Sync. Then Azure File Sync is the option. So it's gonna allow you to centralize your organization files, file shares, and Azure Files provides the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of on-premises file servers. So those file servers can be reutilized in order to available as a cache, and you could configure your Azure File Sync transformation from your on-premises to Azure Cloud, and once you transform, you could take it out. But you want to keep some files as a cache, you could use these things as a quick cache for your Azure file shares. So this is the second service that is offered by Azure Files. So now let's have a look on the performance level. So definitely some of the performances matters here. For example, you have the performance options are available like in a standard and a premium. So let's talk about the standard first. It's gonna offer you double digit milliseconds of the latency. So the latency would be double digits, and in the standard performance layer, you can get the 10,000 IOPS with a bandwidth of 300 Mbps. Whereas with the premium, you would be getting is a single digit milliseconds. That's a latency that you can expect. And also, you are going to get close to 100,000 IOPS. That's what the latency and the performance you could offer. And the speed size, when compared with the standard, you're going to get 5 Gbps speed if you choose the performance layer as a premium. Really, it's worth for a higher applications that needs a very low latency. And these standard performance accounts uses the standard performance always goes on a HDD, and premium goes on a SSD. That's why you're getting this kind of performance. Along with that, you can configure your JED-RS account in a premium wise also, but that's at this point of time it's just the limited to few of the regions, but it will expand as we use the services from Microsoft Azure. But otherwise, it's a great service from the Azure file share side. So what we have looked is, we looked in the designing section for the data access. What are the performance levels you need to know? I think you need to choose the standard or premium, and what is that bandwidth you need to choose, or IOPS, or maybe a latency side. And we also now look at the storage style. So we also talked, if you remember, in the storage account designing side, we talked about the along with the ties, we also talked about the performance and then the tides also. Now it's time for us to understand the tiering for storage account. So here it's going to offer in a 4 different ties can be offered. First one would be the premium. Or premium is, again, it's nothing but your file shares are backed by your SSDs, and it provides a consistent high level performance and low latency, and that will be used for most intensive input output IOPS with respect to the workloads. And this is very much suitable for your workloads, for example database servers, or maybe database to be stored, or website hosting and development environments can be used both your SMB as well as the network file system NFS protocol, so it can be used as premium. So premium tier is useful for that SMB and NFS, and it also you could host your websites, and the SQL database can be hosting. And coming back to the second tier, that would be the transaction optimized, meaning you're not going to get premium, but you're going to work on normal hard disks. So it is basically used for your transactions, heavy workloads that doesn't need the latency. They don't need the latency offered by a premium file shares, and the file shares are oftenly on your standard hardware or standard storage hardware backed by your normal magnetic hard disks. That's where you're gonna use it. And coming back to the storage tier for hot and cool, starting with the hot. Hot will be useful for storing optimized for your general purpose file sharing scenarios. For example, team shares or maybe offered on a standard storage hardware. This actually gonna work on a standard storage, but uh, that's nothing but your normal hard disk will be used in the back end, but we would be using the general purpose file share. But the cool is not like that. It's a cost effective storage optimized for online archiving purpose only, so offer in a again in a normal hard disk. So except the premium, everything on normal hard disks, but again cost effective would be the cool. So these are the you need to determine what kind of storage tier to be there. So you know the performance level, and you know now the storage level, and these are the things you need to consider when you're trying to design the Azure files. During the design, sometimes you might encounter to design or migrate your on-premises NAS services. Then it would be definitely one of the choice for you to go for designing the NetApp Files. So NetApp Files is the enterprise grade file shares powered by your NetApp in the backend. So it's going to give you a greater performance for your workloads that are demanding maybe a Linux or maybe a Windows file workloads within the Azure cloud. It can support a multiple protocols that will enable for you to lift and shift for both the Linux and Windows applications seamlessly into the Azure cloud. And it is also supports the multiple performance, which we are going to cover in the next slide. Anyway, it's going to support close to 460,000 IOPS, or that's a output performance you can expect with the help of Azure NetApp Files. When we try to compare, you are gonna learn on that, and it's gonna help you a lot in terms of the migration for your Windows apps and the SQL services, even Linux OS apps and database, SAP HANA on Azure. You're gonna actually use for such high demanding, no latency applications. You would be pointing them to the NetApp Files, because it's a premium service that are offered by Azure, and it's going to deeply integrate with your Azure. It's a seamless or a highly secure experience that you're going to get. It no learning or no management headache, and it's going to lead for the certifications. Leading certifications also available from SAP HANA, GDPR, and HIPAA. For your migration strategies, that's where you're gonna look for your file service migration for the NetApp services, and it's very performance with aligned pricing also definitely that you could actually which is offered by NetApp. As we talked, this also great storage technology. It offers a flexibility. When I say flexibility, you could actually even build these NetApp file shades directly from your Kubernetes services or Azure AKS services, or your container platforms also can utilize these file shades, and it can run on a high performance in computers like a VDI, AVS, or whatnot. Everywhere it can be used. The NetApp files can be mounted, and it can configure, and it supports these configurations. So when you're trying to designing, if you are trying to get any kind of database or high database specific performance you are looking, or SAP HANA, or maybe specialized workloads like a HPC or VDI or AVS, then you're going to choose the NetApp as the solution. And we're going to compare these things in a minute. There's a small confusion, and most of the time by our Azure architects, like when to use Azure File instead of Azure Blobs, or maybe Azure NetApps. So let's clear on that. Respected also the designing questions or the consideration or the use cases. So beginning with the left side as Azure Blob Storage, and the middle I'm going to put it as Azure Files, and the right side with the Azure NetApp Files. So let's take a minute to review when you should select Azure Blob Storage or NetApp Files, or maybe Azure File Storage. So NetApp Files is a fully managed and highly available, and it is enterprise grade NAS service, which is offered by again NetApps. And NetApp Files can handle the most demanding high performance with very low latency workloads. It enables the migration of your workloads which are deemed as unmigratable without, meaning everything can be migrated to Azure NetApp Files. This is the highest demanding in terms of the file services. Most of the customers, enterprise customers, will go for Azure NetApp Files. So your decision will depend on which technology you're gonna use it. It all depends on a case, that's a use case with a protocol and a performance. Three things. So one would be the use case and the protocol and the performance. So we talked about the earlier the performance, and also we talked about the protocol like NAS or SMB. Now we are going to differentiate these things based on the use cases or different category wise. So the blob storage will support the NFS 3.0 and REST protocol based, and also it can offer you low cost of ownership if there is a little or no maintenance at all. So that's where you're gonna use this blob storage. And for example, scenarios would be you could take a large scale of analytic data, or throughput sensitive high performance computing, backup archive, or autonomous driving, media rendering, or genomic sequencing. These situations, or these are some of the scenarios where you're going to use the blob storage. And definitely it's going to support the NFS 3.0 REST and data lake storage generation 2 also it's going to support. And the output for the performance side, if you look at, it's going to support you 20,000 IOPS per 100 gigabytes through output. You could expect that's a performance value you can expect for the blob storage. Whereas in other hand, for the Azure Files, it's going to support the SMB and also NFS 4.1, which is in a currently preview, but yeah, it's supporting NFS 4.1. And the availability protocol wise, these are the two protocols it's going to support. And also if you look at the performance per volume wise, it's going to support up to 100,000 IOPS and up to 80 gigabytes through output, whereas here you're going to get it the 100 gigabytes. That's the performance wise. And if you look at the use cases and other options that are provided by Azure Files, would be it's going to support for highly available service for best suited for the random access workloads. And for NFS shares or Azure Files will provide your POSIX, which is the file system support that can easily use from any kind of container platforms like AKS or Azure Container Instance, or Azure Kubernetes services can be used. So this is where you're gonna use the Azure file systems, and this is a built-in CSI driver for Azure Kubernetes services. in addition to the VM based, you could use here Azure Files. So some of the best examples we could talk, if you remember here Azure Blob, we talked about the for a large scale analytic data, all of that stuff. But here it's a shared files or database or the home directories, traditional applications like ERP, CMS or NAS migration that don't require advanced management, then you're going to use this. But if you're looking for advanced management capabilities, then definitely you will be ending up with the NetApp files, because it's a pure enterprise configuration what you're going to get it. And let's also look at for NetApp specific. It's actually, as we just talked about, it's a fully managed file service in the cloud, and the backend by NetApp, which is gonna powered by NetApp with advanced management capabilities. You could have the it's best suitable for workloads that require a random access and provide broad protocol support. A lot of protocols can be supported, because not every application is going to support all of these blob storage of files, because it will work based on those applications will work on some kind of a protocol. So if you are looking for a broad protocol support, definitely Azure NetApp would be the right choice for your design. And it also supports the protection capabilities in terms of the data protection. Also it will be supported, and some of the example applications or the scenarios we can talk about Azure NetApp Files would be on-premises. Your enterprise NAS migration fully can be migrated, and that if in case if your NAS service or while you're doing the migration, if you need the rich capabilities in the management console, then NetApp Azure NetApp Files would be the right. And coming back to the workloads, yes, it can support your SAP HANA and the low latency sensitive or latency sensitive, I would say, or IOPS with respect to this sensitivity. Then you could be using the Azure NetApp Files. So there are a lot of applications, they don't accept any kind of milliseconds of IOPS also. Then you are going to use this Azure NetApp file services. So this is a great performance in terms of the compute and workloads that required a lot of multiple protocol access. Then you would be using the NetApp, and it's going to support the 3.0 and SMB 4.1. And coming back to the performance for the volume wise, it's going to support 460,000 IOPS, which is huge if you compare with any of these. This is just a 20,000, and this is just 100,000. This is 4 times bigger, close to or more than that IOPS wise. And through output you're going to get it close to 36 Gbps, which is again high with the combination of IOPS and this. So it's a great performance wise. You are going to get it with the Azure NetApp. So you need to think about a few minutes whether your company going to use which kind of file strategy, and if you think that you need a file share services, if so, which one you're going to choose it, and or maybe in a sync services you're going to use it. So these are the parameters you would be looking into it. So this specific lecture, I think it will be useful for you, and we will be catching in the next lecture on a designing Azure disk solutions. But otherwise, I hope the short lecture will be useful for you.